there was a chief named Raphael. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and always wrapped himself in rich cloths of red and gold. His neck carried heavy coral beads, and his staff, carved with the head of a lion, struck the ground wherever he went. The people respected him, but they also feared him, for his heart was full of pride. When Raphael's wife became pregnant, the whole village rejoiced. They believed the child would bring joy and peace to the land. But the night Melissa was born, sorrow came instead. Her mother struggled in labor. Women surrounded her, fanning and praying, but when Melissa's cry finally filled the hut, her mother's breath faded away. She died before she could hold her baby. The wailing that rose from the hut was loud enough to shake the village. But Chief Raphael did not weep. He stood outside in his wrapper, his face hard like stone. He looked at the tiny baby wrapped in a white cloth and said coldly, "She has taken her mother's life. She will bring me nothing but sorrow." From that day, Raphael wanted nothing to do with the child. The neighbors, moved with pity, took Melissa into their homes. Old women strapped her on their backs, young girls carried her to the stream, and kind men shared their food with her. She became the daughter of the people, raised not by her father, but by the love of the village. As she grew, Melissa became beautiful. Her eyes shone like the river under the morning sun, and her laughter was like the sound of beads falling on a wooden tray. She wore simple white wrappers tied neatly around her waist and cowries on her wrists. Though she had no mother, no father's love, she grew gentle and kind. The villagers adored her. But Raphael never softened. Whenever he walked past and saw Melissa playing with other children, he turned his face away. His lion's staff struck the ground louder, as if to remind her he was chief, not a father. One day, an old woman named Mama Ife, who had cared for Melissa since birth, looked at Raphael and said, "Chief, this child is a blessing. Do not despise her." Raphael raised his staff and shouted, "Silence, woman! A chief does not bow to a child." Melissa grew up under the care of the villagers. She was the child of no mother and no father, yet she was loved by many. The women of Abubura tied her wrappers with care, using bright white and blue cloth. They plaited her hair with cowries and beads, and when she walked to the stream carrying a small clay pot, her steps were graceful, like a dancer's. Though she had no parents to guide her, Melissa became wise beyond her years. She swept the compounds of old women, fetched firewood for neighbors, and carried water for the sick. When children fought, she was the one to calm them. When strangers passed through the village, it was her smile that welcomed them first. But Chief Raphael, her father, never spoke to her. He sat in his great compound, surrounded by wealth, yam barns, goats, and servants dressed in fine wrappers of indigo and red. Every morning he would step out with his lion-headed staff, his chest bare except for the coral beads shining on his neck. The people bowed low to him, but he walked past Melissa as if she were a shadow. Sometimes Melissa would stand far away and watch him. She would see the way people trembled before him and whisper to herself, "That is my father, but he does not see me." The neighbors pitied her, but they could not force Raphael to change. Pride sat on him like a heavy crown. One evening, after the day's work, Melissa sat by the river with her friend Chisholm, a girl of her age. The water was calm, and the sunset painted it with gold. Chisholm asked softly, "Do you not miss having a mother or father of your own?" Melissa's eyes grew moist, but she smiled. "The people are my family. Mama Ife is like a mother to me. And the river feels like it listens when I talk. Maybe that is enough." She picked up a stone and dropped it into the water. Ripples spread across the surface. For a moment, Chisholm thought she saw the ripples glow, as if the water was answering her. The truth was, the river spirits were indeed listening. They watched Melissa with curiosity. Unlike her father, her heart was humble. Unlike her father, she cared for others. Years passed, and Melissa grew into a young woman. She was tall, with skin that glowed like oiled bronze, and eyes that held calmness even in storms. When she tied her white wrapper and walked with her clay pot balanced on her head, young men secretly admired her, though none dared to speak, for she was the daughter of the chief, even if he denied her. The village of Abubura had always depended on the great river. It was their water, their fishing ground, and their pride. But one season, strange things began to happen. The rain stopped falling on time. The soil became dry, and the yams grew thin like sticks. Women went to fetch water, and found the river level dropping lower each day. Fishermen paddled their canoes, but returned with empty nets. Then, without warning, the river changed again. One night it swelled like an angry giant. The water overflowed, sweeping away huts close to the bank. Goats were carried off, and even children had to be pulled from the rushing water. The villagers gathered in fear at the market square, whispering to one another. Some tied cloths across their heads in mourning, others held their children close. "It is the river," an old man said. "The spirits are angry," another woman replied. The cries of the people grew louder, and finally the priest was called. The priest was an old man with a bent back but sharp eyes that glowed with wisdom. His body was covered in chalk markings, and he wore a wrapper of plain white cloth. Around his neck hung a string of cowries that rattled as he walked. That evening he stood before the people, his staff planted firmly in the earth. "The river has spoken," he declared in a deep voice. "The spirits are angry because they have been neglected. For years they have watched Chief Raphael sit on his wealth. He has barns of yam, goats, cows, and riches, but he has given nothing to the river that feeds us all. Until the chief makes a sacrifice, the land will not know peace." The people gasped. Some looked at Raphael with fear, others with hidden anger. Chief Raphael stood tall among them, his lion-headed staff in his hand. His wrapper was a deep red, tied across his chest, and his beads shone proudly in the fading light. He looked at the priest with a proud smile. "Do the spirits not know who I am?" he thundered. "I am Raphael, chief of Abubura. Must I throw away my riches to please a river? Let the water flow as it pleases. I owe it nothing." The crowd trembled at his words. Some of the elders bowed their heads in shame. But Raphael turned his back and walked away, his staff striking the earth with each step. That night, the river roared again, louder than drums at a festival. The waters rose high, carrying away farmland. The cries of children filled the night as families ran for safety. In the morning, the people returned to the priest, their eyes red with fear. "Please ask the river again. What must we do?" they begged. The priest closed his eyes and listened to the spirits. His voice shook when he opened them. "The time for wealth has passed. The spirits no longer want goats or yams. Now they demand something greater, something dear to the chief. They demand his daughter, Melissa." The words dropped like stones in the hearts of the people. A heavy silence fell. Women covered their mouths, children clung to their mothers, and the men exchanged fearful looks. The river had spoken, and its demand was clear. When the priest's warning reached Chief Raphael, the whole village waited with bated breath. The elders gathered in whispers, women held their children close, and even the young boys stopped playing. All eyes were on the chief's compound. Raphael sat on his carved wooden throne, his coral beads glinting in the morning sun. His wrapper was deep crimson, folded neatly over one shoulder. His lion-headed staff rested across his lap, its carved eyes seeming to glare at anyone who dared challenge him. The priest approached, bowing deeply. He wore his plain white wrapper, cowries jingling with each step. His eyes, though old, were filled with the fire of truth. "Chief Raphael," the priest began, voice firm but respectful, "the river spirits have grown angry. Crops fail, the waters flood, and your people suffer. They demand a sacrifice greater than wealth. They demand your daughter, Melissa." The words fell like a hammer on the compound floor. A hush swept the villagers. Some mothers gasped, clutching their children tighter. Young men stared, unsure of what to say. Raphael's face was unmoved. His eyes were cold, his chest heaving only slightly beneath his red wrapper. He shook his head slowly and spoke with a voice like iron. "I will not give my daughter to a river. She is mine, yes, but she is not to be offered to spirits that I do not see. My wealth is mine, my family is mine. No river, no priest, no village shall dictate what I give or whom I give." The priest's hands trembled slightly, but he held his ground. "Chief, do you not see? The spirits will punish your pride. The villagers will suffer. It is not just your daughter, they demand justice, and your heart stands in their way." Raphael laughed low and cruel. He stood, lifting his lion-headed staff so that it caught the sun, flashing like a weapon. "Justice? What justice? I am Raphael, chief of Abubura. The river is but water. Let it rise, let it fall. I will not bow. I will not give my daughter." The villagers murmured in fear. Some hid behind doors, others pressed their hands to their mouths. No one dared speak against the chief. That night, the river's anger was clear. The waters swelled higher than ever before, carrying away small huts and sweeping through the farmland. Children cried for their mothers, goats were lost, and the villagers knew that the priest's warning was true. The spirits were not to be ignored. Raphael slept in his chamber, wrapped in a black night cloth, the coral beads around his neck cold against his chest. Even as the wind howled and the river raged outside, he refused to waver. Pride had settled in his heart, and fear did not touch him. But the priest, standing at the riverbank under the silver moon, whispered to the water, "If he does not bend, he will break. And if he breaks, all that he loves will be claimed." The river hissed in reply, and ripples glimmered like silver snakes in the moonlight. The days after Raphael's refusal were tense. The villagers moved cautiously, their eyes constantly flicking toward the river. Farmers dared not plant new yams, and fishermen stayed on the shore, watching the water churn and bubble. Even the children whispered in fear, sensing something unnatural in the air. Melissa, unaware of the growing danger, continued to fetch water at dawn. Her white wrapper fluttered in the morning breeze, and cowries jingled softly around her wrists and ankles. She hummed a song her mother once sang, a song the villagers had taught her. But the river, swollen and restless, seemed to listen. Its surface shimmered like molten silver, and whispers rippled across the waves, soft and urgent. At the center of the village, the priest gathered the elders and whispered gravely. His eyes, lined with age and wisdom, glimmered in the morning sun. "The spirits have spoken," he said. "No wealth, no offering will please them now. They demand what is dearest to the chief. They demand his daughter, Melissa." A hush fell over the gathering. The women gasped, clutched their children, and murmured prayers under their breath. The men stiffened, unsure whether to speak or flee. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Melissa walked barefoot to the riverbank, her white wrapper fluttering in the morning breeze. Cowries jingled softly on her wrists and ankles, and her hair, braided with small beads, caught the sunlight like tiny stars. She knew the villagers feared the river more each day. They whispered among themselves about floods, lost goats, and the wrath of unseen spirits. But Melissa did not fear the river itself. She feared what would happen if her father did not listen. When she reached the water, she knelt and picked up a small stone. She tossed it gently, watching the ripples spread. Then, hearing her father approaching, she turned. Chief Raphael walked with his usual pride, his red and gold wrapper tied perfectly, beads shining on his neck, lion-headed staff striking the ground with every step. His face was stern, his eyes cold. Melissa's heart trembled, but she gathered her courage. She stepped forward and called softly, "Papa, please hear me. I beg you. Do not give me to the river. I will do anything you ask, but please let me live." Raphael stopped and stared at her. His lips pressed tightly, and his chest rose and fell with controlled anger. The villagers held their breath, hiding behind huts and trees, afraid to intervene. Melissa's eyes glistened with tears. She fell to her knees before him, her hands pressed together. "I am your daughter, Papa. I have done nothing wrong. I have helped the people, I have been kind. Please, I am begging you. Spare me." For a moment, Raphael said nothing. The sun glinted on his beads, and the river behind them hissed softly, as if whispering secrets. The villagers could hear it, and their hearts thumped with fear. Finally, Raphael spoke, his voice heavy like a drum. "Melissa, you are my child. Yes, but I am chief. I cannot bend to spirits. I cannot bow to their demands. If I give you, I lose respect. If I do not, the river will punish the people. But I will not bow." Melissa's heart broke. She stood, her small fists clenching at her sides. She looked up at him, her voice shaking but determined. "Papa, if you do not bow, the river will take more than me. It will take everything. Your pride will destroy the village, and it may even destroy you." Raphael's face hardened like stone. He raised his lion-headed staff, striking the ground, and shouted, "Enough! I am the chief of Abubira. My will is law. I will not give you to a river, Melissa. Go back to your play, and let the spirits take what they will." The villagers gasped. Some covered their mouths, others shook their heads in disbelief. Even the priest, standing nearby, whispered under his breath, "The river's patience is running thin. Pride is dangerous, very dangerous." Melissa sank to the ground, tears streaming freely. She wrapped her white cloth around herself, trembling not just with fear, but with sorrow. She had pleaded, begged, even warned her father, but Raphael's pride would not break. Behind them, the river rippled angrily. The water hissed and swirled, as if preparing for what it would claim next. Melissa's voice, now soft and full of despair, whispered to the wind, "Father, please. I love you. Please don't let this be the end." The day had come. The villagers gathered at the riverbank, their hearts heavy with fear. Mothers held children tightly, men clenched their fists, and elders whispered prayers under their breath. Even the wind seemed to pause, carrying an eerie silence across the river. Melissa walked slowly, dressed in a pure white wrapper that glowed against her dark skin. Cowries jingled at her wrists and ankles with each careful step. Her hair, braided with beads, swayed like tiny stars, and her bare feet sank into the soft mud of the riverbank. She glanced at the river, shimmering like silver under the morning sun, and shivered. Chief Raphael stood nearby, wrapped in a deep red and gold wrapper, his coral beads shining on his chest. His lion-headed staff rested in his hand, tapping the earth with authority. His eyes were fixed on Melissa, yet they showed no emotion. Pride had hardened his heart, and he did not flinch even as the priest began the ceremony. The priest, wrapped in plain white with cowries around his neck, raised his staff and spoke solemnly. "Spirits of the river, we present to you Melissa, daughter of Chief Raphael. May your wrath be satisfied, and may the land be restored." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her father, her voice breaking. "Papa, please. I am your daughter. Do not let them take me." Raphael's jaw tightened. He did not speak. He raised his staff slightly and gave a nod. The villagers gasped. Even the elders whispered prayers, knowing the chief's pride would not break. Two strong men, chosen by the villagers, stepped forward. They gently, but firmly, grasped Melissa by the arms. She struggled, her heart racing, but she knew they were obeying the ritual, not harming her. Cowries jingled, wrappers rustled, and the sound of the river seemed to grow louder, as though it were calling her name. Melissa's voice trembled as she cried to the river, "Please spare me! I am not your enemy." The river responded with a sudden wave, splashing over her feet, pulling at her wrapper. She felt the cold water swirl around her, tugging at her body as if invisible hands were guiding her. The villagers stepped back in fear, some crying, some whispering desperate prayers. Then, as Melissa was about to sink deeper, a giant water serpent rose from the river. Its scales glimmered like emeralds and sapphires, and its golden eyes burned with a strange, gentle light. It coiled around Melissa, lifting her safely from the water. She gasped, staring up at the massive creature, both terrified and amazed. The serpent spoke in a voice that echoed like rolling thunder. "Child of man, fear not. I am the guardian of the river. You were offered because of pride, not because of sin. Come, I will protect you." Melissa felt herself being gently lifted above the waves. The river seemed to calm, the angry ripples fading as the serpent guided her beneath the surface. The villagers watched in awe, some falling to their knees in fear, others whispering that the spirits had accepted her in a way they could never understand. Chief Raphael stood frozen, his staff slipping from his hands. His chest heaved, and for the first time, fear touched him. Pride had led him to this moment, and now, he saw that the river's power was greater than his wealth, greater than his authority, greater than himself. Melissa disappeared beneath the water, safe in the serpent's coils. The villagers stared in silence, knowing that from that day, nothing in Abubira would ever be the same again. Melissa awoke in a world unlike any she had ever seen. Water surrounded her, clear as crystal yet shimmering with colors she could not name. The river's currents moved like gentle hands, and strange light danced across coral walls. Tiny fish, glowing like lanterns, swam beside her, and plants swayed gracefully as if bowing in welcome. The giant serpent, guardian of the river, coiled gently beside her. Its emerald and sapphire scales glittered, and golden eyes watched her with calm wisdom. "Child of man," the serpent said, voice rolling like thunder, "you were offered because of pride, not sin. Here you will be safe. Here you will learn the ways of the river." Melissa reached out, touching the serpent's smooth scales. They felt warm and alive, pulsing with energy. She marveled at the palace beneath the waves, a place of coral towers, pearl-studded halls, and soft, glowing sand. Time passed differently here. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, though Melissa did not notice. The serpent taught her the secrets of water, how to calm floods, summon rain, and communicate with the fish. She learned to move like the current itself, her white wrapper replaced by flowing robes made of shimmering blue silk that moved as if alive. Cowries adorned her hair, sparkling like stars, and her eyes glowed with the light of the river spirits. She discovered she could call fish to her side, control waves with a flick of her hand, and even make plants grow underwater with a whisper. Her heart was gentle, filled with the love she had always carried, but now it was powerful, connected to the river itself. The serpent spoke often, its voice like rolling thunder. "One day, child, you will return to the world above. The father who refused you will face the river's justice, and you will decide the fate of all who live in Abibura." Melissa listened carefully, feeling the weight of her destiny. She remembered her father's pride, the villagers' fear, and her own helplessness the day she had been cast into the river. She vowed silently, "I will return, but I will bring justice. I will not harm the innocent, but pride will not go unpunished." Under the river, Melissa's beauty grew radiant. Her skin shone like polished bronze, her hair floated around her like dark silk, and her presence commanded respect even from the river creatures. She moved with grace, learning patience, wisdom, and the strength that came from understanding the balance of nature. The serpent would watch her from nearby, coiling protectively, teaching her courage and control. Melissa practiced every day, her heart growing stronger, her powers growing deeper. She realized that the river had not taken her as punishment. It had saved her, nurtured her, and prepared her for a task far greater than she had ever imagined. Years passed beneath the river's calm and glowing waves, but on the surface, Abibura had not forgotten Melissa. The villagers whispered her name in fear and hope, wondering if the river would ever release its daughter. Crops grew thin, the river still roared at times, and Chief Raphael's wealth no longer brought him peace. Pride had hardened him, but it could not shield him from worry. One morning, as the sun rose like a golden drum, a strange light shimmered across the river. The villagers gathered on the bank, murmuring nervously. Smoke from cooking fires mingled with the early mist, and the river seemed to pulse like a living being. Suddenly, the water parted. From its depths rose Melissa. She was no longer the young girl who had been cast into the river. She moved with grace, her flowing robes of blue shimmering like the waves themselves. Cowries adorned her hair, glinting in the sunlight. Her eyes, bright and calm, held the wisdom and power of the river. A hush fell over the crowd. Children stared wide-eyed, women whispered prayers, and men lowered their heads in awe. Birds circled above, as if honoring her return. Chief Raphael, who had been watching from his compound, felt his heart tighten. Pride gave way to fear. He stumbled to the riverbank, beads of sweat running down his chest. His red and gold wrapper hung loosely, and his lion-headed staff slipped from his hand. "Melissa, my daughter, is it really you?" he whispered, voice trembling. Melissa's gaze swept over the villagers, and finally, she looked at her father. She spoke, her voice carrying the calm authority of the river itself. "Father, you refused to obey the spirits. You allowed pride to rule your heart, and the river has waited for this day." The serpent guardian emerged behind her, coiling its massive body around the riverbank. Its golden eyes glowed, and the villagers fell back in awe. The water rippled with power, reflecting Melissa's presence, as if the river itself had taken human form beside her. "The chief must now answer for his actions," Melissa said softly. "The river's justice will be done. Not for me, but for all who have suffered from pride and greed." Raphael fell to his knees. Beads rattled, the staff clattered, and his chest heaved with fear. "Mercy! Melissa, my child. I was wrong. I see now. I see my pride." Melissa's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "Father, words cannot undo the harm. The river does not forgive without balance. Your fate will be decided by the spirits." The water surged higher, curling around Raphael. The villagers gasped, some covering their faces. Beads of coral and gold reflected the morning sun as the chief reached out, but it was too late. With a final swirl of water, Raphael was pulled into the river's depths. Silence fell. The villagers stared at the calm river surface, trembling, knowing that justice had been served. Melissa turned to the people, her voice gentle now. "Abubura, pride destroys, but humility and care bring peace. Respect the river, respect life, and the spirits will watch over you." The villagers knelt, crying, praying, and thanking her. Women wept openly, children clung to. After the river claimed Chief Raphael, Abubura fell silent. The villagers could hardly believe what they had witnessed. The waters, once angry and restless, were now calm, sparkling in the morning sun. Fish slept freely, and the gentle flow reflected the sky like a mirror. Melissa stood at the riverbank, her blue robes flowing like water itself, cowries jingling softly with each step. Her hair braided with pearls and beads shimmered under the sunlight. Her golden eyes, glowing with the power of the river, swept over the villagers. "Abubura," she called, her voice soft yet carrying the authority of the spirits. "Your suffering was born of pride. Your chief refused to listen, and the river demanded justice. But today the lesson is clear. Humility, care, and respect for nature are what bring life, not greed or pride." The people bowed, some crying, others whispering prayers of thanks. Mothers pressed their children to their breasts, and fathers nodded with solemn understanding. They had learned a truth far deeper than any words. No wealth could replace respect for the forces that shaped their lives. Melissa turned to the river, kneeling at its edge. The serpent guardian, now coiled behind her like a shadow of emerald and sapphire, watched silently. "Spirits of the river," Melissa said, "I vow to guard this village, to teach its people to live in harmony, and to protect all who respect the balance of life. Let your wrath be tempered by love." The river shimmered and sparkled, waves curling gently around her feet. A soft breeze carried the whisper of the spirits, as if granting their blessing. The serpent lowered its massive head, touching the water with a nod, and slowly disappeared beneath the waves, leaving only calm ripples behind. From that day on, Melissa became the guardian of Abubura. She taught the villagers how to live with the river, how to plant and harvest with care, and how to honor the spirits that watched over them. She wore simple blue and white wrappers on land, her hair braided with cowries, yet when she entered the river, her robes shimmered like flowing water. The villagers grew prosperous again, but this time with respect and humility. Children learned the songs of the river, mothers and fathers prayed before fishing or planting, and the village elders told stories of the girl who had been cast into the river but returned as their protector. Melissa never forgot her mother, who had died giving birth to her, nor the love of the villagers who raised her. Yet she knew that her greatest gift was the river itself, which had transformed her grief into wisdom and power. Years later, when people asked about the river, they would say, "Beware the waters, for they see all. Honor the spirits, respect life, and the river will protect you. But never let pride rule your heart, for justice will always flow like water, and it cannot be stopped." And so Abubura flourished, guided by the river and its guardian. The villagers learned that pride brings ruin, but humility, kindness, and respect bring harmony. And Melissa, the chief's daughter, became a legend, the girl of the river, the protector of Abubura, and the reminder that true power comes with love and care. The river rippled gently, as if smiling, and peace settled over the village at last. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below.